Hi, and welcome to the GKT Essay portion of our workshop series presented by the Writing Center and Academic Support Center at Daytona State College. Now, a lot of rumors go around about the essay part of the GKT test, but I'm here to reassure you that most of those rumors are not true, or at least they're exaggerated. And the goal of today is to kind of help you know what you're getting into and to hopefully conquer any fears you have about the test. Because frankly, knowing is half the battle. So our goals for today are to really kind of talk about what it's going to be like in the essay testing environment. We're going to look at some sample prompts to see what kind of questions you would be asked on the essay portion of the test. We'll talk a little bit about how the test is scored. We'll actually look at some rubrics and discuss what you should be adapting in your essay to make sure you can kind of get those extra points you need. We'll practice brainstorming together as a group, and then we'll also make a follow-up game plan. So the larger goals of the workshop today are to make sure that you have tips that can work for any testing environment. And then fortunately through the college, we also have other resources to help you get individual feedback. That's where the partnership with the Writing Center comes in. So you can also follow up after the workshop today to schedule an appointment with the Writing Center where you can practice simulating taking the test. And then you can also make an appointment to work with a writing specialist who can give you individual feedback on your specific writing and tailored to your needs. So for this portion of the exam, the Florida Department of Education has stated that this is what they are basically looking for in your essay. So the intent of the essay test component is to demonstrate your ability in the time allotted to compose and write an original essay that completely addresses the topic in an effective, well-organized manner with good grammar and spelling. That doesn't seem so bad, right? Totally can do that. You guys have written hundreds of essays just like this, so this one's not that different. We just have to make sure you get it all done in 50 minutes. And this is also a moment where I like to remind you that you are not alone. This is a very stressful process for a lot of students, but there are so many success stories that come with it. This is just one example. Caitlin was a student just like you who was preparing for the GKT. She studied, and she passed. So she attended all of our workshops. She also used the Writing Center for individual feedback, and she's well on her way into the education program now. So once you actually get into the testing facility, if this is your first time, you should be prepared that you will also be patted down and you will have to get everything out of your pockets. You're not allowed to enter the testing facility with anything. I know when I went in, I was a little bit jarred that I couldn't even keep my keys on me, but nothing in your pockets, nothing, and make sure you get a good night's sleep the night before. And yes, eat your breakfast or lunch or have a snack on the way because you don't want to be tired or hungry while you're taking the essay portion of the test. So once you're there, you're in your seat. These are kind of the things that you can expect. So you will have 50 minutes. The timer will be shown on the computer screen while you're taking it. You will be given one prompt. And it is on a low-tech word processor, which, as you can see by my funny memes here, hopefully they're funny, that means no spell check. So think kind of like if you're familiar with Notepad, it's very basic what you're going to be typing on. And I know some people worry about their typing speed. You do have to be able to type, and you will not have time to write out your essay and then type it. You will have to kind of gear up your typing skills to have them ready for the essay as well. Now that said, you will have a dry erase sheet and a marker that you will be able to make notes on in the testing facility. So you can use that for your brainstorming, which is what we're going to go over later in this presentation. The test is scored by two actual humans. Unlike other parts of the GKT where it is computer graded, your essay will actually be reviewed by two graders who will each read the essay, and they will look at the rubric and then assign you a score of 1 to 6. And on the next slide, we're going to look at what the rubric breakdown looks like. A combined score of 8 is required to pass, so you're going to hear 8 is kind of like the magic number. So this is the full rubric that a scorer would use to review your essay, and you can see it's very familiar with other types of rubrics that you've probably seen in the past. And for our purposes today, we're going to focus on that line between 3 and 4, because in my experience and the experience of my colleagues, usually this is the line where students fall, because if you're below 3, you are not passing, versus if we can get you to the 4, 5, or ideally 6 range, you're well on your way to acing the GKT essay. So we're taking a closer look at what separates an emergent essay from an adequate essay. So typically I would not want to describe my writing as adequate. However, in the context of the rubric for the GKT, an adequate is just fine. Ideally, you're going to get a 4, 5, or 6, but really you just need the 4 from both scorers to be able to move on. So that's what we're going to kind of focus on here for the next couple minutes. The main difference here, as we're looking at the criteria that separates basically a failing essay from a passing essay, is that the main idea is stated with specific examples. So that's something that you have to keep in mind while you are planning your essay and while you're developing your essay, is that you cannot rely on just generalizations as your supporting details. You also are going to have really firm organization. So that means a clear thesis statement, clear topic sentences that are again developed and supported with supporting details. You can see in both rubrics though that you can have errors. So typically it is not going to be any kind of grammatical mistakes that are going to hold you back on the essay. If they interfere with meaning, that's going to be a challenge, right? But if it's just a typo or two, I know I had those kind of funny memes a few slides ago that said, you know, keep clam instead of keep calm, but really even just a typo is not going to be what is going to make or break your essay. What will though is having organized information, again, topic sentences, clear thesis statement with specific supporting details. So that's going to be your challenge today, and then your challenge when you're taking the essay. So with that rubric in mind, we're going to kind of walk through our first sample prompt together, and then also look at a couple example paragraphs of how they might fall between a 3 and a 4, and some tips to help you make sure that you're on the 4 to 5 to 6 side of that breakdown. So the first sample prompt we're going to look at is here. Many leaders have suggested over the last few years that instead of a military draft, we should require all young people to serve the public in some way for a period of time. The service could be military or any other reasonable form of public service. Do you agree or disagree with this statement? Support your opinion with specific examples from history, current events, literature, or personal experience. So, thinking about the prompt here, we already know one major important thing. This is going to be an argumentative response. The prompt very specifically says, do you agree or disagree? So that means you kind of need to pick a side in your response. Now that you can always include a counter argument. A sophisticated writer can kind of do both, but you want to make it clear that you do either agree or disagree with the statement. So yes, follow what the question gives you. And then you can already see feeding into the rubric, support your opinion with specific examples. Now on this type of prompt, a lot of students will ask, do I have to give an example of all of those things? No, you do not. Ideally, you're going to maybe pull from a little bit of personal, a little bit of your academic background, some current events, but it doesn't have to be one for everything. Regardless of what you list, though, the main thing is to be specific with those supporting details. So let's take a look at a couple example paragraphs of how that might play out in an essay. So in response to the prompt that we just looked at together, here are a couple examples of responses to that. So the 3 paragraph here, their thesis statement is, I agree that all young people should serve the public in some way because it is important to help people and has been important throughout history. So that's good. We're off to a good start. We have a cleared side. They do agree. So we have a thesis statement. And then this is where we're going to get into their body paragraph, their first supporting body paragraph. The Vietnam War caused a lot of problems when people were forced to join the military. This shouldn't happen again. A military draft creates anger, and anger creates upset citizens. My grandpa was drafted into the Vietnam War, and it was not a good thing for him. Throughout history, we've seen that unsatisfied citizens lead to bad things. For the country, this is why people should be required to serve the public instead. So, I've highlighted a couple things here because there's so much potential in this response. It's not terrible, but what it is lacking is specifics. So it's great that they had personal experience that their own grandfather had served and it wasn't a good thing for him, but they needed to provide why it wasn't a good thing for him and then connect it to the larger question. A lot of problems. The only specific kind of that they give is that it creates anger and upset citizens, but again, more concrete evidence to support those claims is what this paragraph would need. Now let's take a look at the number 4, like this response that was scored with a 4. Their thesis is all young people should be required to serve the public. Doing so would create more informed voters, national pride, and an appreciation for public services. If people are required to serve the public, they will pay more attention to how they vote. So again, great job at showing their side and then also kind of laying out the format for what their body paragraphs are going to be. Their first body paragraph is public service. Give people an idea of which programs help the public most. This way, when people vote, they will be more aware of which programs work and which programs don't work. For example, if someone works for the DMV as part of their required service, they will have a greater appreciation for the work the DMV does and might be able to offer valuable input on how their services can be improved. So in this response, I have highlighted only one simple couple words that I want you to commit to memory now. The big difference between this 3 and this 4 essay example is for example. You wouldn't have to use for example for everything. You could use such as, or any of your setting up specific examples, phrases that you have in your repertoire. But that really is the make or break for this example versus the 3. So again, you're always going to be wanting to be providing specific examples to back up your claims, just like you would in any other type of writing. The GKT essay is no different. And then I also want to point out that both of these examples have grammatical errors. So again, it is not going to be grammatical mistakes that will hold you back. Now, if your errors are so egregious that they actually interfere with meaning, that is problematic. If the reader cannot, discern what you're actually trying to say, then that's a problem. But a typo here or there is not what's going to make or break the 3 versus 4. It really is going to be organization and having specific information. So kind of elaborating on that sample prompt that we just looked at, I have a few more tips for things that you should do in your essay. So a lot of students will ask, well, can I talk about my own personal experience, or am I supposed to just use like scholarly articles in my responses? Well, you won't have access to any kind of secondary resources in the testing center, so it's all your brain. So that totally means you should use your own background and personal knowledge. You should also use facts and information that you know. If you read an article last week in the Chronicle of Higher Education and you're pretty close to remembering that 70% of students have taken an online class, you can totally work that into your essay if it's relevant to the topic. If you can cite it, even better. But the scorers are not going to be like fact checking your essay. They're more so interested in, can you state a claim and can you support that claim? So definitely use any kind of other previous information that you already have. The other thing that you should make sure that you're doing is use third person predominantly, unless first person is appropriate. So you will want to keep the tone of your essay more formal in third person and limit your use of I and you. We've already said this, but it's worth repeating. Have a clear thesis and topic sentences and include claims and supporting details. The last bullet point addresses kind of length and organization. A lot of students will also think, well, do I have to make this a 5-paragraph essay, or how many paragraphs should I have? We're going to go over on the next slide examples of how the prompt really should help you know how many paragraphs you should have. So sometimes 5 paragraphs will work, but it doesn't have to be 5 paragraphs. Sometimes 3 might be enough, and other times it might be 6. Ideally, you're going to structure your paragraphs around what the question is asking you. So we'll look at that in just a couple seconds of how that can play out based on the type of prompt you get. So for example, if your prompt is something like, discuss the advantages and disadvantages of online education, perhaps your essay format would be something like your introduction with your thesis statement, of course, then maybe a paragraph about all the pros or advantages, a paragraph about the cons, and then a paragraph that concludes all that information. Or maybe you have two body paragraphs that juxtapose pro cons on the same topic, pro con on the same topic, and it still adds up to 4. Or maybe you have 2 pros, 1 con, and it ends up being 5 paragraphs. But typically you are going to let the prompt tell you how many paragraphs you need. Same with the second example here for the other prompt, how online education might be used in an elementary school, a middle school, and high school. So that would be one easy way to just go ahead and organize your paragraphs in response to that. Again, an introduction with a thesis statement, a paragraph that addresses how online education might be used in each of those groups, and then a conclusion paragraph. So just to remind you, 8 is the magic number we're looking for. Ideally, it's even higher than that, right? I've even seen some 12s in my time. So it can be done. This is very doable, but when you're kind of looking at how to maximize your chances for scoring, helping look at the rubric and knowing that this is very doable. You can easily achieve an 8 and go ahead and move forward in your career. So hopefully you're feeling pretty good right now. You know that you can decode some prompts. You know a little bit more about how to organize your information, but we also have to remember that this is all happening in a very limited amount of time. So like we said before, you only have 50 minutes to complete the essay portion. So this is where I like to remind every student that managing your time is essential. But I also like to provide a visual because even with decoding and planning, which I'm going to highly encourage that you do, you still have the majority of your time as represented on this pie graph is still writing and typing. So it is worth taking a little bit of time at the beginning to really figure out what the question is asking you. The worst experience is when I read a student's essay and they have not followed the prompt. So really taking time to make sure you understand the question, plan it out accordingly to how it should be organized, and then taking 5 to 10 minutes to brainstorm some ideas so you know where you're going and you don't just start typing and then 20 minutes into the test you're like, oh no, I ran out of steam. It is so worth taking a little bit of time at the beginning to prepare yourself for when you're actually typing away, getting your essay on the screen, and then also leaving a little bit of time for yourself at the end to review your essay. So that's where you can catch little typos. That's where you can go ahead and add back, oh, I don't have a supporting detail here. I'll make sure that's there. And then make sure that you are monitoring the time. So yes, it is submitted and that it is complete, because you also want to make sure you have all parts of your essay done. You don't want to forget to add a conclusion. You want to make sure you have as complete of an essay as possible when the 50 minutes is up. Hopefully you're starting to feel a little bit more confident and are feeling ready to take the test. Let's practice one more prompt together and talk about how we might organize this essay based on this prompt. So, in the last 20 years, the deterioration of the environment has become a growing concern among both scientists and ordinary citizens. Choose one pressing environmental problem, explain its negative impact, and discuss possible solutions. So I went ahead and bolded the words that stuck out to me while I was decoding the prompt, and I would encourage you to kind of do the same in the test while you're taking it as well. So we know based on this prompt that we have to pick something that's fairly current in the last 20 years. We only want to talk about one environmental problem. So again, this is where we take our cue from the prompt. We're not going to discuss all the environmental problems. So in this case, the more specific, the better. And then really the latter part of the question tells us how I should organize my essay. So I'm going to pick one thing, I'm going to explain how it's negative, and then discuss the possible solutions. Now, in a high stakes and high stress environment like a test, I'm just going to go with what I know for a prompt like this. So I live in Florida. I know that plastics and beach pollution is an ongoing conversation worldwide, but it's certainly one here too. So that would be very easy for me to just go ahead and start jotting down on my dry erase board like, oh yeah, this is something I can make work. So my one issue could be with my thesis, one pressing issue that's facing Florida is the plastic pollution of our beaches. That's it. That's all I would need to kind of get me up and running. Then I could kind of start brainstorming what are some of the negative impacts of that one problem. So obviously we know wildlife are disrupted, plants and animals. My goodness, sea turtles. We always want to save the sea turtles. So I'm probably, if I'm brainstorming, I'm jotting that down. And then we also know that we rely on our beaches also as a source of income for many of our local and statewide economies. So if our beaches aren't clean, it's going to deter tourists. So that would be something else that I might list as one negative impact of beach pollution in Florida. So that's basically my first paragraph, would be discussing each of those and providing some examples. But again, I'm just taking the first 5 minutes or so just to get my wheels going so that I know that I have enough to build on when I start typing my essay. Finally, I would jot down some ideas of how there might be possible solutions. So these are just the ones that came off the top of my head. And probably when I actually start writing, more ideas will come. But again, 5 to 10 minutes to really figure out what the question's asking, and then also to make some notes will greatly pay off when you actually start typing your essay. Okay, so for this slide, I'm just going to ask that you take 5 to 10 minutes on your own to read the prompt thoroughly, decode it for yourself and figure out what it's asking you to do. And then also take another 5 to 10 minutes to try to plan out what your essay might look like in response to this prompt. You can pause the presentation and then proceed after you've done some brainstorming. Okay, hopefully that felt okay, practicing doing some decoding and brainstorming on your own. And I kind of just wanted to follow up a little bit on this prompt because this is one where I like to point out that the first sentence is really just a lot of extra words. They're kind of guiding you with some potential topics you could address in your essay, but really the actual question is just that final statement. So analyze how these skills are essential for success in the workplace. So this prompt, unlike the other one we just talked about, really is very broad. So you can talk about really any of those soft skills that college graduates would need and why they're necessary after a student graduates and enters the workplace. So hopefully it felt good brainstorming and you could draw on your own experience, your experience in college, and also your experience working with others to answer a prompt like this. And I would encourage you to use any of the prompts that we've kind of talked about today to really just time yourself and practice, whether it's just the brainstorming portion or practice the full simulation, right? So if you have an extra 50 minutes in your day, you can use one of these prompts, or you can even just Google sample GKT prompts if you want to mix it up and find some other ones. And practice timing yourself. Get in that habit of like, how does this feel to have to write this type of essay in the time allotted? But really just with a couple types of practice, you will feel much more comfortable. And after you have done a sample essay and written it all out in full, timing yourself and making it using all 50 minutes to maximize making your essay as awesome as it can be, you can use the rubric that is the official GKT rubric that we looked at before. And then I've also kind of created a little bit of a more basic checklist for what you can look for when you are assessing your own work. So again, some of this should sound familiar by now, but you do want to make sure you have an introduction paragraph with a clear thesis statement. It does not have to be super fancy or frilly. A lot of students get stuck on making that first paragraph sound interesting. As long as you have a thesis statement, that's enough to get you up and running. With extra time, you can always go back and make your introduction and your conclusion a little bit more, pretty and smooth and all that, but where you're going to make or break your score is in those body paragraphs. So when you're assessing your own work, make sure you have topic sentences, supporting details, and evidence to support those claims. And lastly, yes, you do want to have a conclusion. Even if it's just a sentence or two, you need to make sure that you're demonstrating for the scorer that you know that a conclusion is a necessary part of a complete essay. Now, kind of bigger picture, organization, you will want to make sure that those topic sentences are guiding the reader and that you also have transition words. Those visual cues that kind of easily tell the reader, hey, I'm giving you evidence, like for example, such as, here's one example of, those are all the types of phrases that you're going to want to incorporate into your essay. And lastly, like I said, you don't want to overstress on grammar. Again, I bring this up because a lot of students express that fear, like, oh my goodness, I rely on spell check. We all do. But as long as you are able to have some sentence variety and to not have mistakes that are so, so muddled up that you can't understand what you're saying, that's not what is going to make you not pass the GKT. You also want to try to avoid cliches or jargon, right? You want to be as original as possible, but also make sure that you're writing for a reader who might not be fully aware of your personal experience. So too much jargon or personal information that's not translatable will not be appropriate for the essay. So make sure that you are making an essay that's written for a reader who is academic and informed, but also doesn't know everything about your experience. In addition to using the self-assessment checklist, I highly encourage all of you also to reach out to the Writing Center to make an appointment to have your essay reviewed and to get some individual feedback. So we do offer virtual appointments. It's super easy to schedule them if you just go to our website at daytonastate.edu/CWC, which is posted here. We have a live chat where you can touch base with a writing specialist to ask quick questions, or you can also just say, hey, I am trying to prepare for the GKT and I'd love to set up a time to get some feedback on my prompt. It's super easy, and then we meet online with some screen sharing software. So we are happy to help, and you can have up to 3 appointments in a week. Each appointment is 45 minutes long, so that's plenty of time and opportunity for you to, if there are some things that you're still like, I know this is something that I would like more information about, or I know what you're talking about when you say transitions, but it's been a while since I've had to do this type of writing. This is where you can come to get that individual feedback. And in addition to pairing that with what we've gone over in the presentation today, you'll be geared up and ready to take the test. Thank you for taking time to watch this presentation. If you have more questions about the Writing Center, I again encourage you to visit our website at daytonastate.edu/CWC, or you can email the Writing Center at cwc@daytonastate.edu. If you have specific questions about this presentation, please email me directly at kristenbales.bales@daytonastate.edu. I love helping students prepare for this test because it is so important. So whether you have questions about this or you want to get more information about how to prepare, or if you're getting ready to take it, this presentation helped and you just want to tell somebody that you passed, I'm always happy to be to hear that kind of great news. So it's always good to hear when people are making progress, and if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out. Good luck.